thankfully, since I'm moderating myself, I'm able to start late, which means since my break time was reduced, we have 2 minutes till I begin, during which time I would like you to peruse my abstract if you have not already read what I'm going to present. But at the end, I'll ask you to judge by a show of hands or by applause or something whether I actually did what the abstract says. And since I can't remember what I wrote, this will be a pretty difficult challenge. What I brought with me though, and I introduce you by way of introduction to quite possibly the best handmade rice cakes in this province. You will get to eat these. And very good people among you will get to eat more than one. Alright? I believe in motivation. I believe that motivation is the most important thing in the world. Because motivation can do anything. If you have motivation, you can change the world. If your students have motivation, they can learn English. And in fact, if they're really motivated, they can teach each other to learn English, and they can teach you stuff.
Abstract.
I learn a lot of things from my students. So despite the fact that we haven't started yet, I'd like you to have a look at my abstract, talk amongst yourselves, and if you're good at juggling, I'm going to have a little competition in a moment, and we'll find out who is very motivated by extrinsic rewards, because these are extrinsic motivators. And I use these kind of things in my young learners classroom, and I'll come to that in my presentation, which will start in about 60 seconds. So talk amongst yourselves, have a look at my abstract, relax, breathe, enjoy a presentation without moderation.
Looks like everyone got a book except me.
I think it's in the schedule that perhaps they had a registration.
So make sure it's
I've read
Another copy
don't
here.
video. Right, so
Let someone else.
I don't have one either, but I think they were at the front desk.
Oh, okay. 지금 뭐 하는 중이야? 아니, 아가씨 뭐 하는 중이야? 이걸 시작했어요? 그래서 시작하니까 밥 눌렀죠? 그래서 책들에 가지고 있어요. 근데 한 명도 없어서 그래서 또 주면 돼요.
okay. Good. All right, so extrinsic motivation. What's the other kind of motivation? Intrinsic motivation. This is still introduction, by the way, and I'm going to introduce myself later. I'm well known in the field of ELT for being the longest introducer that there is. So my presentation will be 30 minutes of introduction, and then one pechakucha and a bunch of other stuff that I'll get through at the end if I can do that. I have 116 slides for you today, and I am known in some parts of the world as the mad professor. I'm also known as the jolly professor, which is my real name. Now, extrinsic motivation, what's the other kind of motivation? Who can explain intrinsic motivation? When I hear the words intrinsic motivation, I start to feel love in my heart. Because intrinsic motivation is so beautiful. It's when people learn, because learning is good. Learning is a wonderful thing. English is a beautiful way of expressing yourself, and you can teach that to your students if you're lucky. Or they might come to you already intrinsically motivated because they had an amazing teacher like Barbara who taught them when they were 6 that there are people in other countries speaking English, and it's a great thing to do. Or that they come to you as total ratbags with no concept of respect for themselves or other learners, at which point you can try to convince them that they should be intrinsically motivated, or let them feel the love of intrinsic motivation, or you can bribe them with extrinsic motivation. So one of my first points about the key ingredients of a great young learner's classroom is that as a teacher, as a motivator, you strike a balance between intrinsic and extrinsic motivation. And David Paul, who's one of my heroes in the field of young learners, KOTESOL, young learners authoring, says that Extrinsic motivation and intrinsic motivation is a continuum, right? Nobody only uses rewards. Only a total Nazi motivates with rewards and with a stick, right? So you can use extrinsic motivation, but somewhere there's something intrinsic going on. Or you can be the opposite. Like me these days, I don't use rewards in my class anymore because I've been teaching for 10 years. So I'm almost a master. Howard Gardner, the multiple intelligence guru, says, 10 years, you can master something. So if you've been a teacher for 10 years, you can be a master. I've been a teacher for 8.5 years, so I'm like little master, maybe. I don't need these kind of things in my class anymore. But when I started, I used rice cakes. And I did things like what I'm going to do right now, which is I'm going to challenge somebody to out-juggle me and win rice cakes. And this is a thing that I've done in my classroom. I don't have video because when I did this, I didn't know that I was going to become who I am now and wish that I videotaped everything that I did when I was nobody important at all. So, who can juggle? Come forward. I need at least one more person. You have to juggle 3 though. Yeah, and if you can do better than me, because I'm only average, you can take those and share them. But we need one more person at least. Wait, no, let's get somebody else up here. Sir. But that's good because
I'd love to show off.
But you know what? No, because but the thing is, this is intrinsic motivation. So I'm gonna let you take it. Don't worry. I'm gonna give you this to try. I'm gonna give you rewards for debasing yourself on stage and video. Thank you. What's your name? Renee. You're a gentleman, a scholar. Okay. So
If you're failing in front of 1, 2, 3 cameras, this is the biggest challenge of my life. I recently read in that to be a great teacher, you need to attempt to fail spectacularly, and that's what I'm going to do.
okay, I give you Renee, an accidental genius, and that was a great comment. And this is Vijay. Vijay, would you have any comments for the audience before you jump? How confident are you feeling? Because he might be a shark, but he's like, he's going to come up here and go, What about you?
I'm not that good at this, but I will try.
All right. So who's going to go first?
I will set the standard.
All right. Set the bar low, please.
Yeah, no.
Are we going tricks or?
Just whatever you want to do.
3 legs.
Oh, that's pretty good. Very close. Well, hold on, one more try. I'll give you 3 chances.
Rewind the tape.
Okay, now I have to try.
Oh! Goodness! Oh, that's out of control! Oh! Stay out! Stay out! Oh! If my girlfriend was here, you would be dead, buddy. Hey, look at that. That's awesome, man. Rock star.
You're good.
DJ?
I'm intimidated.
Oh my goodness.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Wow.
Wow.
Very nice.
All right.
Thank you.
What are you doing? You want me to jump 6? You are like my best student and my worst student. Okay, let's see how I go. Wait. How about that? And I actually danced in the middle of mine. Okay, let's see. Who do you think was the best? Round of applause for Renee. Round of applause for me, Jay. Round of applause for yours truly. See, you're just like my middle school ratbacks. You can take away, I'll let you take away 4 and share some of those. Keep 1 for yourself. Renee, since is it true?
It was true.
It was true. That's unbelievable. See what happens when you have an intrinsically motivated teacher? That's what you get with a guru. There we go. Well, you can share them out as you go around.
Sorry.
Okay, so what was I saying about being the longest introducer in the world? Or one of the longest. We're still in the introduction. Now what I'm going to do, so I think I've shared already one idea with you, haven't I? Extrinsic, intrinsic motivation. Find something that wows your class, especially in the first class. Spend a bit of money. Or if you don't have money, steal. Redistribute. You know, talk to somebody who has a truck. Once somebody said to me, Aaron, would you be interested in some cheese that fell off the back of a truck? And I said to him, bam, 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 bam. Because I know when I get that cheese, I can give it away. And that's one of the secrets of being a teacher, giving something away. Do you give away your love? Do you give away intrinsic motivation? Do you make your students feel that English is important? Do you help them to see their light, like Barbara does, if you saw her presentation before? Right? Her students feel that. Other teachers who are part of the community that she's in, they share their love, their passion, their creativity. They create that intrinsic motivation. Or if you have too many rat bags, or even if they're not rat bags, or you're not sure whether they're going to torture you, then wow them with something like that. Because that's what I do. What I do on my first day with a middle school group, I would do something like that. I'd bring some kind of magic, some kind of physical challenge, some kind of funny thing, and everybody gets to eat something pretty good. And especially in Korea, where there's this, are you familiar with the concept of jong? Jong means like hospitality. Did I say it wrong? Jong?
Right.
Jong, right? It's the idea of giving. And the students at the middle school where I used to teach, they refer to the period when I taught there for 2 years as the golden age of foreign teachers. Because I used to arrive once a month with a giant sack full of bong tiki, which is the moon-shaped rice cakes that goes bong when it pops out of a packet. And I'd have all my team, all my classes had teams, everything had some kind of points value, and at the end of the month, the best team got lots of good stuff, right? Now, one of the science teachers during a drunken soju moment once said to me, you're not actually really a teacher at all, you're just the bong tiki guy, right? And I said, if only you knew. One day, I'm going to be famous and I'm going to tell stories about you, and people will laugh with me and at you, sir. But after that, my friend said, you shouldn't speak Korean at these events, Aaron. Okay, let's have a look at a video.
Yeah, there's a funny nose. You chose a very funny nose. Good. Okay, Julie, can you come and choose a mouth, please? Can you choose a mouth? Okay.
Watch Wanda. Choose the mouse. Mouse.
This is a mouse? Wow. Excellent. Okay, Michelle, you can choose the eyes. Good girl. Okay, you want to be next? Okay, you want to be next?
See, those eyes that she just did, they're what's known in trade as puppy dog eyes. Are you familiar with puppy dog eyes?
Yeah.
That's puppy dog eyes. That's like melt the teacher's heart. Right? Why aren't you giving me a chance? Look at my eyes. Master of puppy dog eyes.
Want to be next? Okay. Okay, who's next? Okay, who's next? Who's next? Okay, Jason, you can be next. Jason, can you choose a hair, please? Okay, you want to be next, do you? Next?
Hurry up and choose the hair. That one, no, that one.
Okay.
The flower.
Wow, look at that.
Okay, so what's going on there? I mean, my presentation is supposedly the keys to teaching young learners. What's happening in that video? Firstly, okay, we don't have a lot of time. This is not one of my 3-hour workshops where I can walk around like a great philosopher and ask lots of rhetorical questions. Since I have 30 minutes, I'm going to answer most of my own. What's going on here is, okay, let's do a couple more. You guys are pretty fast.
We're completely engaged with the lesson.
Yes. Thank you. What else?
And then they're developing their own ideas and their own story.
Yes.
Students are intrinsically strongly motivated.
Yes, now, good point, because that's about 6 years into my teaching journey, and those kids never got a eating reward. They got to eat. We had a party once every 6 months. So no extrinsic motivation at all, except it depends on what you consider extrinsic motivation to be. Some people think the teacher praising is extrinsic motivation. And I tend not to overpraise because I read a book that says praising is not too good. But no actual food. They didn't get any food prizes, no stickers or anything in my class. Sir?
I was going to say the extrinsic motivator there is to get to touch the mouse.
Okay, so they want to touch the mouse.
Yeah, so like that is what's like, you know, the one, and they're also the one making the decision.
Sure.
So that's
Okay, yes.
And
Students are learning.
And they're also dealing with intrinsic motivation, getting involved. It's extrinsic again from the other students, like saying, oh, look at the rainbow hat, good job.
Renee, I'm so happy that my lover is not here today because she would leave with you. He kind of did not look what he did, you know. What else was I saying until I just rudely distracted myself? Oh, one more person. Who else can?
Can I just ask a question
Yeah.
here?
Yes, you may.
I don't want to be the difficult corner.
You can be.
It has to be the me file. Now, if you work in a public school with a Korean, sorry, I don't want to say, an Asian co-worker, and their ethos is, you are the child and I am the teacher, you know, this direction.
Sure.
What do you do if they control the whole thing? What would, you know, okay, I love seeing those children do
Yes,
that.
yes.
That's the Western way,
Right.
isn't it? But sometimes in an Asian way, it may not be. What do you think?
And I agree with you and disagree at the same time.
Yeah,
I'll offer
please
to
do.
Skype with you
Yeah.
sometime and I can help you.
Yeah.
So firstly, I'll happily give out my details at the end, and I do Skype with people that come to workshops and answer questions that would take a whole presentation to answer.
Oh, I don't want to be difficult.
But two quick things. Agree with you that there are many co-teaching situations in Korea and probably in other places in Asia, though I'm not an expert, where the system seems to be conservative such that you're supposed to be, for example, in that video, what am I doing? Absolutely almost nothing. It seems like I'm doing nothing, but I actually did a lot. You know what? There's a wall right here. That was a wall. I fought my boss for 18 months to knock out that wall so I could use that technology in the classroom. I taught for 2 years without being able to do that. And finally, when I've been there long enough, and this is answering your question, if you stay long enough and build trust, then things change. Why I disagree a little bit that this is a Western way of teaching. When I show this video to new Western teachers in Korea, like foreign teachers, you know what they say? I ask them, what do you think of that teaching? Most of them, not experienced teachers in Korea, say that's terrible. You know why? Because firstly, there's a lot of second language. It's all Korean, right? There's a lot of Korean going on. And secondly, it seems like there's no control, and they're saying me, right? Which is impolite. But I actually think it's good teaching because of all the things that Renee said. Renee, please follow me around as I travel Asia and do presentations, because what Renee said is true. I can answer in more detail in Skype.
Yes. No, I'm just, yeah.
But I know what you mean about being oppressed by your co-teacher, but sometimes it works the other way too. Like, yeah, did I answer your question at all?
You did on that thing, but I guess, yeah.
What age are your students?
Actually, I have middle school and elementary.
Then that's...
Yeah.
The answer is you might not be able to solve that problem. The answer to what might you do is go to a different school at some point. Like I usually say, when I do workshops for teachers, I say, you try your best, do your best, and then after a certain amount of time, you find another team. I was a football coach. I coached a lot of losing teams. And after a while, you find another team, and you probably still lose as much as you win, but that's probably the solution. Sometimes you might not find a solution.
And if they don't have your education philosophy or ethos, you're wasting time, aren't you?
Perhaps, yes. But I will try to help more with specific questions on Skype. Can I just offer to Skype with people for free? Thank heavens there's only 20 people here. And nobody will want to talk with me probably. Okay, let's move on. I want to show one more video. Where is it? Okay, here it is. Where are you? Sally. Sally, oh, I love you. She's so cool. This is Sally. Sally is in grade 1 at this time. Next to her is Alex. Alex is a kindergarten boy with a large head in more ways than one. Alex is in his paired reading activity, fulfilling the role of coach and observer and helper to Sally, who's in grade 1 and very tall for her age, though this is her attempt to read her very first book aloud. She's read some kind of phonics readers, which don't really count as books because it's like, I see my mum, I see my dad, I am happy, I am sad, I am happy, I am sad, happy, happy, happy. Right? That's what an average phonics reader is like. She's read like 50 of those over a period of time, and now she's going to become a fluent read aloud reader in time, reading books that are actually storybooks. This is from Penguin Readers, an abridged, easy version of Goldilocks, and I give you Sally. About 30 seconds after I told her, Sally, I'm going to videotape you as you do your first ever read aloud. Don't worry, I won't ever show it to anybody except your mum.
Godzilla and the Three Bears. Here are 3 bears. Mommy, Daddy, and Baby Bear. Oh, this is hot. She walked into the kitchen. Oh,
That's right, kitchen's right.
Thank heavens I was there to correct the corrector, because he thought she was wrong. He wasn't really listening. If you notice, before that point, he's arrogantly like sort of chewing gum and not really paying attention as well as he should have, and he thought she was wrong, but she wasn't wrong. And this poses, if you know anything about error correction theory, the idea is you shouldn't really error correct young learners, right? You should just recast and rephrase their grammar mistakes and things like that. But what do you do when you're teaching a child to be a teacher and they make a mistake in their teaching? If you error correct their teaching, is that incorrect error correction? So I sat there for a second, because I think about these kind of things because I'm a little bit crazy and I'm a jolly professor. And I wondered to myself in that split second, should I error correct his error correction? But I did error correct his error correction, because I said kitchen is right. But when you do this kind of activity with groups of students, you can't error correct the error correctors all the time. So
I used to just say, oh, you'll have your turn soon.
you'll have your turn soon. Yeah, good. Yes, that would be a nice way of not saying you're wrong.
Yeah.
Yes, that's good error correction of incorrect error
Positive
correction.
statements, isn't it?
Yeah.
Positive and encouraging them, not making them feel worthless. That English is difficult for them.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
oh,
Yes.
I don't like this. Oh, Mom, this is good. I don't like this. Oh, I like this. Oh no, I like this. That's
Breakfast.
the bag comes back. Oh, my.
Now, actually, he's actually pretty good, because I've trained them. This is about 3 months into having trained some of these kids to do this shared reading. You see how long he waited? Like, she stopped on a word for a long time, right? But because these kindergarten kids are intrinsically motivated by the idea of learning how to be a coach or a helper in a shared activity, he actually has taken my instructions seriously, and there's this long wait time. Because I explained the concept of wait time, which is you shouldn't just jump in right away and give someone the right answer. So he's not too bad. I did embarrass him earlier, but Alex is a pretty good coach.
Chair and bed. Roll, go right, run and run.
I absolutely adore this part of this video. Can anybody describe her emotion right now?
I made it.
Yes, thank you. I made it. There's a word that starts with E, the second letter is X.
Exaltation.
Exaltation, no. What do you feel when you go on I'm going to give 3 pieces of dog. What do you call it? Pardon me? When you take a roller coaster ride and at the very end, what's that feeling? Exhilarated. Bingo. There's 3 pieces for you. You can share those around. Exhilaration. I think it's exhilaration like, oh my goodness, I've made it, I did that. I didn't think I could do that, but I did it. This time I'm not going to ask you to deconstruct my video, except I'll say that this is and look at the look on his face. Isn't that priceless? It's like, I think he likes her more than he likes me. Or am I still doing okay? Did I do a good job as the coach? What's my feedback going to be about my coaching? Because I did give him feedback. I did say, well, what happened there when you said she was wrong with breakfast because she was right? And I do this in Korean because I'm kind of bilingual.
Yeah, I was going to say you get a translation, because sometimes the children, when you say a particular thing, they might not understand whether it's in
True, I'm a bit of a cheater because I learned Korean and I teach bilingually until the kids are in 2nd grade at least. I don't believe in immersion classroom at all, except in very specific circumstances. 100% English is a ridiculous notion.
Yeah, I think, Aaron, like you said, you're a little hard on him, but as a teacher, you always judge which students can take it and which students can't.
Sure, and he's got a big head.
So
literally he has a big head, and I have a big head, and I know that people with big heads can take a bit of criticism usually. What else about this? In terms of young learners classes, what's happening? What is this? It starts with T, it's got 4 letters, ends in K. What is it? It starts with T, ends in K, has 4 letters.
Task.
Bingo, it's a task, yeah. Thank you for your Australian, but it's a task. It's I speak like a North American in a lot of words. It's a task, yeah. It's a task, right? It's not just like, let's all read 1 page, like round robin reading. Please, you don't have to put up your hand. I'm not going to ask you to do round robin reading. But if you know anybody who does a reading activity where 1 student reads 1 page and 1 student reads another page, we call this teaching suicide. Right, because this is like, kill me already, the class is awful. Right, what happens while 1 student is reading 1 page and the student is over on the other side waiting for 6 more people to read? What is the student doing who's waiting for 6 more people to read a page? Are they actually engaged? They're not engaged at all. But if you do an activity like this, and I would do this in a class even of 30 kids, and you have to come to a 3-hour workshop with me to learn how that might work. But the idea is that you're trying to find engagement and some meaning. So both of them have a role, right? There's a meaningful task going on, right? But round robin reading where each kid reads 1 page, that's almost completely meaningless. That's like Sisyphus. Anybody like the Greeks? Sisyphus who rolled the boulder up to the top of the hill and then was condemned for the rest of his life to see it roll down and then do it again and again and again. Right? So you need to find ways in young learners' classrooms to make sure the students are engaged. And again, if you want more of my presentation, you should join Barbara's community and follow my Twitter and Facebook stuff that Paul's helping me get going, because I can't answer all of the questions today, but I can give you a couple of kernels that you need to really reflect on when you go to do your lesson planning. Like, do you have meaningful tasks in your class, right? Is it engaging? Can you get this kind of reaction, right, from your students in the classroom? Because I videotape a lot of my classes, and again, another thing that you might be looking for is where your class becomes almost automatic. I can do videoing with up to 12 kids, where for big portions of the class I don't even teach, right? They teach each other. So again, the keys to teaching young learners, right? Treat them like adults. I believe that. Treat them like adults. Right? Respect them. Give them roles. He's a teacher, right? You know, that's his role in this, right? And respect them. Tell them they're going to be video stars if you have to. Trick them a little bit, but the idea is, you know, looking for tasks. Again, Howard Gardner talks about how education, the problem with education, even in the West, and I really hate it when you see Western people come and do presentations in Korea where they talk about Korean education system and compared to back home. But even back home, I think about my schooling, right? Almost everything I learned at school is kind of useless, right? All of the stuff I copied, my teacher wrote on the board in my lit class. She wrote down all of the essays and I copied everything. The only reason that I actually can write is because outside of the class one day, she asked me, why are you a total idiot clown in my class? Why are you wasting time? You know, you have a talent to become somebody. Why don't you do that? So it's what she did outside of the classroom to me that actually influenced me, touched me, intrinsically motivated me, and then I started copying down everything she was saying and asking her questions about it, right? Because she found a way to make it meaningful to me, right? So meaning, you're looking for meaning, right, in your class. And I've got like 15 minutes for my slides, by the way.
Yeah, because then there's that culture thing, isn't there? Like in the school, I found in a culture thing.
Yeah, I don't really want to talk about culture today, though.
Oh, no.
Sorry, but we can talk on Skype about culture at length. Because I've been impressed and I've been lucky here in 9 years by situations, and there are ways to kind of circumnavigate things, and there are ways to break through, like literally knock down walls, because that's what I did. I knocked down a wall to be able to make that class, that video I showed you, right? And arrange those little chairs in a semicircle so all the kids can see the screen and still get to the mouse. That took a lot of thought, right? And a lot of thought and a lot of commitment to my students and a lot of commitment to the idea of intrinsic motivation. I'm not going to show any more videos, but I love, you know, you've got to see me present when I present for 3 hours because I show lots of videos of my kids. They're so cute and I miss all of them because I'm not teaching them anymore. Who am I? I was not lying about the longest presentation of all time. I resemble the thinker, therefore I am. Again, the key to being a great teacher of anybody is you need to think about what you do. Be a reflective teacher. I reflect, therefore I teach. This is Descartes meeting Tom Farrell, the reflective teaching guru. If you're not familiar with Tom Farrell, you should get all of his books and send him emails and tell him that he's an Irish-Canadian genius. Tom Farrell, Thomas Farrell. This is being recorded, right? And you're hashtagging me, because I'm teaching Tom how to do that hashtagging stuff. Reflective teaching practice. These are the things, the key things in my opinion for a young learner's classroom, pretty much any classroom, but especially a young learner's classroom. Be reflective, which means think about what you do and what works and what doesn't. Use multiple intelligences and critical thinking approaches. Learner training, student-centered. Promote acquisition over learning. Input-based approaches like extensive reading and extensive listening. I don't have time to show those videos. I don't have time to do this warm-up because we had fun. Okay, cooperative learning. This is an activity you can do. 1 to 2 minutes of teacher modeling. I'm going to show you something you should definitely do in your classroom. Let's go back to that slide. All right, this is using speaking frames. Another really important thing in the young learner's classroom anywhere, especially in Korea, is that you create models and you give your students a frame. So we're going to do a little activity now. Hi, my name is Aaron. Nice to meet you. Oh, hold on. I'll just do it myself. Hi, my name is Aaron. Nice to meet you, Aaron. I was wondering, would you tell me about your most memorable school moment? Sure, I remember I had a lit teacher in year 11 who took me out of the class and told me that I shouldn't be an idiot and that I could be a great person if I tried. Oh, wait, sorry? What about you? Oh, gee, I went to school in a place in Canada where there weren't any good teachers. Oh, let me think. My dad was a great teacher. He taught me to read books. I love my dad. Thank you for sharing. Right, I want you to do that with your class. Okay, stop.
Why are we doing this?
Thank you for your sharing.
Okay, this is an example of an activity, cooperative learning activity. Now, with your partner you sat down with, you could share something that you discussed, or you could send something back to the teacher. So another example of a key thing to do in your classroom, make it interactive and have a task and then do mingling. What are the key ingredients of young learning teaching? A happy and inspired teacher. Student-centered classroom. Affective filters are lowered. Fun and laughter in the class. Using Paul Nation's 25% rule. And the class or the homework is wired in some way, like Bob's class. And having good adaptation and supplemental materials. I'm just going to talk about a couple of things. Here are some questions to ask yourself as a teacher. Are you happy? Are you healthy? Are you smiling a lot? Are you organized? Where are you on the humanist versus behaviorist continuum? right? Is your class humanistic? Do you believe in Roger's fully functioning people or Skinner's rats? So if you believe in Skinner's rats, then you're probably going to give a lot of extrinsic motivation, right?
We're not rats.
Next, prepping your lesson. How much time do you spend prepping your lesson, honestly, and do you really think creatively when you prepare? Student-centered learning. People talk about the 80 versus 20% rule. What does that mean? In the classroom, in the language classroom, what should be 80%?
80% for students and 50% for teachers.
Yeah, well, how much? You know what? I know that you're really intrinsically motivated, so I'm going to give some more. Who didn't get any?
Juggle.
Didn't get any yet. There we go. There's some for you. Sir, would you like some? Thanks. There you go. There's another one for you over there, right?
Cameraman didn't get anything.
Oh, okay. Paul, would you share some at the back of the camera person? There you go. Did you catch that?
She's done better.
Yeah, okay. So, ideally, the classroom should be 80% students and 20% teachers talking. But if you ever had somebody come and time you, just use a stopwatch. Someone times how much is teacher talk and how much is student, right? I took the challenge and I got around about 50-50. And that's why I started videotaping my class, to force myself to shut up, right? Because I'm videotaping. So what that part of a lesson I just showed then is an example, right? Students are talking, do the activity again, find a new partner, share the ideas back. Mingling activity is an example of how you create 80-20. But I mean, maybe in Korea 80-20 is possible, maybe impossible, maybe everywhere. How do you organize your classroom? So this mingling activity, if there was a big row right across there and nobody could move, impossible. So classroom organization is really important. Like I said, I knocked out part of the wall. Maybe you can't do that, but think about the organization. Needs analysis. To do student-centered learning, what do your students need? What kind of English do they need? Barbara thought that her students needed to know that English is an international language, right, to be able to motivate them. But how did she know that? Students' comfort is important, right? So that the students feel relaxed and comfortable in the classroom. In a big middle school, maybe that's going to be very difficult, but are the students comfortable, and how can you soften the environment? Some people play classical music at the beginning of their class. Or would you do me a favor and shut the door? Because I did start late on the last presentation anyway, so I'm going to take another 7 minutes before I finish. So this is a student saying to Mr. Smith, as we start the new school year, Mr. Smith, I want you to know that I'm an abstract, sequential learner and trust that you will conduct yourself accordingly. So basically, do you take your learners' learning styles seriously? And if you don't know about learning styles, then look up learning styles and use learning styles in the class. So is your classroom student-centered? Here's an example, this picture. Students are engaged. They're doing something. But that's a student-centered activity. How many activities in your classroom have the students looking at something like that, being engaged? Effective filters. Is it something that's interesting to the students, right? Are the activities interesting? So that little activity about a memorable moment, this is for teachers, and I figure that's a little bit interesting to you, right? When I chose that as a thing to do in an activity. So if you're going to ask students to talk with each other, is it about something they're interested in? Do you use learner surveys in your classroom? Again, these are keys to a good young learner's classroom. How can you survey your students and find out what they are interested in before you create your lesson? Do you ask for information from your students before you spend lots and lots of time making PPTs? I spent a whole weekend making PPTs about bands for my middle school students, and then when I went and did them, the class, all the students looked at me like somebody died. And they said, oh my God, it's Dongbang Shingi, like that's what the 11-year-old's like. That's like 2 years old and it's really kitsch and bad, right? So I should have asked them all first about what their favorite bands were instead of assuming that I knew as a 30-year-old kind of imposter on their youth media. So do you follow the youth media, right, online? I'm trying to actually follow what kids get into, right, and use that to embed in the classes. Do you know the latest trends, the latest music, and can you put that into your classroom? This is an example from a series that I've been working on with Longman, where the company has decided to use Poptropica characters with the course book because they know that students are really, really interested in Poptropica, it's one of the most popular websites. So they take the same idea into your classroom, right? It's one of the most popular kids websites in the world. Why don't we use that to make materials? If you're making your own materials or choosing materials, choose materials that are appropriate in terms of being interesting to students at that age. Fun and laughter. This is Monty Python, the Silly Olympics, right? It's completely ridiculous. All these people run in different directions. I do a speaking activity based on this. It's about directionally challenged people. We don't have time to look at the video, but the idea is it's hilariously funny. So I use Monty Python videos in my class. How did I come? There's another one which is a running race for the deaf, and the starter guy stands there shooting the gun over and over and nobody moves. Right, there are people, there's the swimming race of people who can't swim and they dive in the pool and they just go at the bottom of the pool. Nobody actually swims. And then there's one for incontinence where it's a marathon and they keep having to go into the bush to go to the bathroom every like 100 meters. They're right over the side, right? It's hilariously funny, right? And we all laugh together. That's another really important thing with kids. I have a kindergarten class, and one of the things I've been teaching them that they can't say, oh my God. They learn it from older kids and they think it's funny, but it's actually rude and some people think it's blasphemous. So I told them to say, oh my. But one of the kids learned from another kid to say, oh my gas rangey. Right? Oh my gas rangey. And they think it's hilariously funny. So now I actually say it from time to time and they burst into laughter and we just laugh together for 2 or 3 minutes in every class. And that bonds us and creates some of that intrinsic motivation. Nation's 25% rule. If you're not aware of this, you need to be. 25% of your class and your language program should be meaningful input. 25% is language, focusing on the language. 25% is meaning-focused output, like what we just did with that activity where you're speaking with each other. And 25% is fluency development, which means we do the same activity again later in the same class or another time, right? So you need to have input, you need to focus on the language, you need to have output, you need to have fluency. Those 4 things. I don't have time to look at the activity. Are you wired? Which means, are you like Barbara? Do you bring the internet into your classroom? Do you bring technology into your classroom in some way? If you're not, then join Barbara's blog and follow Barbara's Twitter things and get more wired and do those kind of things in your classroom. Adaptation and supplementation. This means if you have a course book, have you thought about how you adapt your course book, right? Do you just say, open your book to page 48? Okay, everybody, open your book to page 48. It's a good page, isn't it? Right? But what do you do before you open your book? Right? Can you do an activity in the beginning that takes 5 minutes with juggling or something that's somehow connected to the lesson because it's about, the story is about juggling or about a clown, right? So what happens before you open your course book? So the keys to great teaching and great young learners teacher is, are you happy and are you inspired? If you're not, you need to actually think about that. Go and join a meditation club. Go to bed earlier and wake up earlier. Get fit. Smile as much as possible, because if you're happy as an individual, then you can be a better teacher. If you're unhappy, then find a job where you make a lot of money and be inspired by making money. If you're intrinsically motivated, that's the way that you go. You need to be happy and inspired. You need a student-centered class, which means meaningful tasks or sharing with other students, finding out what they're interested in and engaging them. You need to lower their affective filters, which means don't over-error correct them, don't make it stressful, don't make them have to perform on the spot in front of a video camera like I do, unless you've built up a very close, bonded, intrinsically motivated relationship with your students. Don't challenge them to do things that they can't do, and don't tell them they're wrong, and don't hit a stick on the table. Does your class have lots of fun and laughter in it? Do you mix up your class, which is Nation's 25% rule? Do you have meaningful input, as well as language-focused learning, as well as meaningful output and fluency? Is there time in your class to practice with the language that they already know? And is your class wired? Is the homework wired? And how do you adapt your class? What are your adaptation and supplementals? Now, I don't know if I really did so well with my presentation today, but I promise you, if you take these 7 things away and put them in your teaching notebook, and before you do your lesson planning, look at these, and if you follow Barbara's blog, and follow my blog and follow lots of teaching videos with me, with my students, and talking about them, you'll get lots of ideas about how this works. If you already know how it works and you haven't been doing it enough, then keep something like this in your lesson plan, right? Before go and what's really important for the class to be successful, and I'm going to get kicked out. Thank you for your time today. I've been me, and thank you for coming, and see you around the tracks.